Guru Gauri Sanjaya Radhikaya Tadale Krishna Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranam devotees. So I'm trying to do a pretty succinct video that deals with a very important sort of framework for devotees, both new devotees and senior devotees, and how we perceive the culture in which we mutually try to advance in bhakti. So throughout the entirety of our scripture, we see a very prominent theme, and that theme is pariprishna. Pariprishna means relevant inquiries. Similarly, we see jigyashoshraya uttamam, that one should approach Guru and one should make inquiries into the highest aspirations of the practice of bhakti. One should inquire, how do I obtain bhakti? So inquiry is everywhere. Sukadev Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit, Sutta Goswami to the sages at Namasaranya, Narada Muni to Brahma, Maitreya and Vidura. Everywhere you look in Srimad Bhagavatam, this exchange of questions and answers or inquiry is very prominent. So it is obvious from all of these things that the process of inquiry is paramount in making advancement practically in bhakti. So without inquiry, there is no ability to really receive illumination about the things that we hear. Because when we're hearing things in the arena of bhakti, for newer devotees, many things are new to them. And for those even who are more senior devotees, the process of bhakti is ever unfolding, and therefore there's ever fresh information, hopefully that turns into realizations and revelations. But so the process of inquiry is not something that comes to a point of satiation or comes to a point of ending at some point, and then we just glide on a certain understanding. But our unfoldment is constant, and therefore the process of inquiry is constant. Where there has been problems, which has generated, a crisis of faith in many ways, is when there is more of an emphasis on a cult of compliance. So I'm addressing what I have in the title of this particular session. And a cult of compliance is when we try to make a uniformity of thought and a uniformity of progress among thousands of individuals, millions actually, but thousands in the more contemporary sense of different institutions and how many active practicing devotees there are. There's probably millions of people who have some affiliation, but practically speaking, thousands of devotees who are attempting to navigate the process of bhakti. We have this idea that somehow or another we have to create a uniformity of thought. It should be really made clear that bhakti is the pursuit of an individual that's being practiced in a collective of like-minded persons who are pursuing that same goal. So it is not that when we come into any particular sangha or particular grouping of devotees, then suddenly a sort of homogeneous thought process has to start to take place. No, we are still individuals, and even more so by the fact that praktanaka adunaki chasti yat sat bhakti vasana. we all have previous impressions, perhaps, in varying degrees of bhakti from previous lives, and those impressions or samskars that have also been garnered in this life. So everybody is in a unique bhakti DNA profile, so to speak, in their pursuit of the goal of bhakti, which is love of God. So it cannot be that there's the imposition of homogeneous thought, or there is a, quote, box that everyone is put into, and that box formula has to find application in every single individual's unfoldment. Other than that, then sometimes there's a weaponization of the acharya, right, in any institution. So it doesn't have to be specific to a particular institution, but then there's a weaponizing of the acharya whom everyone is following, and there's a, well, the acharya said like this, and then filtering that through one's own understanding, and perhaps a consensus sort of understanding that has become what is the sort of, for lack of a better word, that imposed homogeneous thought process. Everybody should comply with this kind of understanding. And we don't encourage inquiry, we don't encourage investigation, we don't encourage pursuit of anything outside of what the homogeneous thought process is. So obviously this is very, very detrimental to growth in bhakti. Many people who come to the path found something probably inspired from their previous, or obviously inspired from their previous samskars in bhakti. They found a resonance with this process. They found a resonance with this practice. And they came to the practice with a very open mind in most cases of how to proceed forward. So what happens to those persons then becomes very, very important as to how their unfoldment will actually shape out. If we, again, create a cult of compliance rather than a culture of inquiry and individual growth, then we will find that there are many, many problems which will automatically manifest from that. So, for instance, one of the things that happens in a cult of compliance is that there is a ceiling set for where and how far devotees can go within the context of that cult of compliance. So let me give a practical example so it doesn't seem so abstract. So, practically speaking, when many devotees inquire about things which are related to the sadhya of bhakti, the word sadhya means the goal of bhakti. What is Krishna prema? What is bhav? What is the nature of prema as it functions in the Leela of Krishna? What is the position of those who possess the greatest love for Krishna, the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani? What is the nature of my spiritual existence? How is my spiritual existence accomplished? What is the nature of having a spiritual body, a siddha deha, etc.? So whenever questions regarding things in the sadhya come up, because there may not be a universal realization among the sort of leadership in any given group, right? There may not be an actual everybody's at the same exact point, right? The tendency is to then impose a ceiling. And what this ceiling does is it creates a socio-spatial relationship. And what I mean by that is it allows that those who consider themselves and are seen by others as more senior to maintain a kind of status of being like that. And if they are unable to fulfill that dynamic by being able to be Siddhantavit, means to understand clearly the Siddhanta and be able to answer all of these things, the tendency is to crush that level of inquiry. To minimize that level of inquiry is unnecessary, irrelevant to you, etc., etc. Therefore, whenever it comes up, the the methodology or tactic that's used to address it, if it's not outright dismissal, is the association of the question with disastrous results of persons who inquired about it previously or attempted to act on it previously. So I'm giving an example. I heard once when a devotee inquired about the stage at which Raga Nuga Bhakti begins. So first there was no explanation. What is Rag? What does it mean to be Raga Nuga? What is Srila Prabhupada's statements on Raga Nuga? What are our previous Acharya statements on Raga Nuga? How does Raga Nuga relate to the practice we're currently doing? None of that was explained. What was explained was that it only happens when you're a pure devotee. So obviously that answer is incorrect, because if you're a pure devotee, then you're not performing Raga Nuga Bhakti, because Raga Nuga Bhakti is a sadhana. You understand? If you've obtained Siddhi, then you're not doing Raga Nuga Bhakti, right? Because you've obtained your Siddhi. So Rupa Goswami has written there are two kinds of sadhana: Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, Raga Nuga sadhana bhakti. So Raga Nuga Bhakti is a sadhana. So if you've obtained Siddhi already, that's not the time you start the practice of Raga Nuga Bhakti. So first, the general answer was spontaneous, but it was wrong. And then secondly, the person went on to give the example of somebody who was doing book distribution. And another thing that often comes up is taking something that is very heartfelt, to, for instance, to our Srila Prabhupada, book distribution. It is to all of our acharyas. Going back to Jiva Goswami's desire to have the books of the Goswamis distributed by Narottam Srinivas and Shamananda. The very famous pastime of them taking the books and going back towards Bengal to distribute those books, which have all been written by the Goswami Varga in Vrindavan, and the stealing of the books by Maharaj Virambir, etc., etc. So book distribution is dear to the heart of all of our acharyas. It was in particularly dear to the heart of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Parapadma. So book distribution is very prominent. So then to take examples like I'm about to mention, where a devotee was doing book distribution and he was doing very well, but then one day he inquired about Raga Nuga Bhakti, and when he made that inquiry, from that day his mind changed and he began to deviate in his service. Then he became attracted to a homosexual relationship. So the story really went so far out of context of anything, that it just left the atmosphere with, we definitely don't want to deal with Raga Nuga Bhakti. You understand? So this kind of dynamic is the very things that create a cult of compliance, because what is being seen or promoted as insulation is actually incarceration of the ability of devotees to grow. What would have been apropos here is to explain clearly, if the devotee knew, or if he did not know, what is Raga Nuga Bhakti, I am not really familiar with how and when the practice of Raga Nuga Bhakti begins. I will research that. I will inquire from more senior devotees and check with our Srila Prabhupada's books, and we can come together at a later time and I will give an explanation. This would have been the humble and sincere way to exit that question. Or, if you truly had information of what is Raga Nuga Bhakti, to explain what is Rag, what does it mean to do Raga Nuga, how Raga Nuga is related to our practice, at what stage does Raga Nuga begin, describe the levels of maturity from Shraddha to Sadhu Sangha, what is Bhajan Kriya, what is Anarthas, and what is the stage of Anartha Nivritti, how one comes to Nishta after that. In Ruchi, the chitta or the consciousness of the aspirant is suited at that time. Tatat bhavadi madhyure shuti dirapekshate na sasana yuktingsha ta lobat utpatti lakshanam. The hallmark quality of Raga Nuga Bhakti is lob or greed. And so in Ruchi we have the shlok, and we have the evidence that the prominence of Raga Nuga Sadhan begins in the stage of Ruchi. So this is how you create a healthy healthy culture of inquiry, where people feel inspired to inquire how to make practical progress in bhakti. when you shut everything down by these sort of, I don't know, very disastrous ending stories regarding, questions regarding something that's in the realm of Raganuga Bhakti or whatever it might be, and you shut it down via a narration like that, you've then sort of incarcerated the faith and the forward movement of devotees who, well, yes, I would have liked to have heard the answer to that question. And therefore, when they hear the answer, they derive both inspiration, but they also derive the proper methodology of seeing how to accomplish that goal. That is a goal in our practice. Mahaprabhu came to give Prem Rasniyos Karite Ashwadan Rag Marg Bhakti Loke Karite Pracharan. Mahaprabhu himself came and he preached this methodology. Our Srila Prabhupada identified us as Rupanuga. Rupanuga is Raganuga. Because Rupanuga means following the teachings of Rupa Goswami. More internally, it means following Sri Rupa Goswami as Rupa Manjari. So everything about the practice has been written by our previous acharyas, by our Srila Prabhupada, etc. So we should lean towards answering everything from that point of view. Now I want to give another example here. And again, I'm trying to keep this very short. I heard also that one devotee was speaking about Siddha Pranali. And I guess the topic came up as a matter of discussion about corrupted views of what is Siddha Pranali and Srila Prabhupada's response to it. Now, I looked those things up in the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada's summary on the Nectar of Devotion. Srila Prabhupada clearly wrote, let me see if I can find it. If I can, I definitely have the paraphrase for it. But let me see if I can actually find the actual statement of Srila Prabhupada. Because I like to always quote from Srila Prabhupada directly when it comes to these things, so there's not any confusion. I found it. So this is in the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada's summary of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu. And a devotee inquired, I guess, about Siddha Pranali. So then Srila Prabhupada writes, in this connection, no, actually this wasn't an inquiry, this was just Srila Prabhupada writing, I think, in the context of discussing many things regarding receiving the Siddha Dehar or our Siddha Dehar, etc. So these are quotes. In this connection, we should be careful about the so-called Siddha Pranali. So first and foremost, now, Srila Prabhupada says, in this connection, we should be careful about not Siddha Pranali, so-called Siddha Pranali, right? The Siddha Pranali process is followed by a class of men who are not very authorized and who have manufactured their own way of devotional service. They imagine that they have become associates of the Lord simply by thinking of themselves like that. So first and foremost, Srila Prabhupada has qualified whom he's talking about in relation to so-called Siddha Pranali. So this raises the question, well then, is there such a thing as Siddha Pranali genuinely, or is the whole entire concept of Siddha Pranali like what's being described here? Right? So then we have to go on to see if what's what. So I'll now read from a conversation that Srila Prabhupada had with one devotee. This conversation is available on Srila Prabhupada's memories. The devotee's name is Rishikeshananda. If I don't mention his name, you won't be able to find that particular remembrance tape. And it's also been documented in many, many places in regards to this conversation. By the way, Rishikeshananda Prabhu, he was a Srila Prabhupada disciple, from what I understand. But anyway, you can look up his history and everything. I want to try to make this video short, so you can look up his history and everything. Now, he was a person, when he came to Srila Prabhupada, he was going to help because he had become fluent in Sanskrit and Bengali and Hindi, etc. So Srila Prabhupada wanted to engage him in translation work, and they wanted to have the translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I happened to be in Los Angeles in 1975 when they had that marathon working on Chaitanya Charitamrita, working on the books in general, but I believe it was especially on Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, but he had a small copy of the Upadeshamrita of Rupa Goswami. And he mentioned to Srila Prabhupada, you know, this is only 11 verses. And these 11 verses can easily be translated. And Srila Prabhupada agreed, and Srila Prabhupada went with him at that time, and they translated what became Nectar of Instruction, or Upadeshamrita. So in the course of the conversation that he was having with Srila Prabhupada, this topic comes up. So, Rishikeshananda asked Srila Prabhupada, speaking now, about Nitya Lila, Siddha Pranali, Ashtakaliya Lila, Smaran, right? Gurudev, so he's addressing Srila Prabhupada. So he's asking a question, are these things right? Srila Prabhupada said, yes, but who is Siddha? In other words, the things themselves, yes, they're true, but who's Siddha? That should be understood. Who's Siddha? 1 out of 1,000,000 seekers. This is Rishikeshananda. Let me be careful to when Srila Prabhupada is speaking, when he's speaking. So now he says, Rishikeshananda that is, says, 1 out of 1,000,000 seekers, but is it Nitya Lila our goal? Srila Prabhupada, yes. We are followers of Rupa and Raghunath. We are followers of Rupa and Raghunath. This is the highest understanding. To be Das Anu Das in Radha Krishna Lila. Let me repeat this statement of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, yes, we are followers of Rupa Raghunath. This is our highest understanding. To be Das Anu Das in Radha Krishna Lila. Rishikeshananda Prabhu. But what about Siddha Pranali? How do we qualify? Who will give it? Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada. Guru will give. There is no material consideration about Guru. Is here or there. When you reach that level, Guru will give. So now immediately we have to go back and ask, if the entire process is bogus, how will Srila Prabhupada affirm to Rishikeshananda that Guru will give? Now, I'm just doing this to first clarify the difference between what is bona fide process of Siddha Pranali, and I'm going to give some history and everything else in a second, but I first wanted to get Srila Prabhupada's own statements regarding so-called Siddha Pranali that he qualified by the unscrupulous and ill-practicing persons that he gave a description of earlier, and his conversation on the Siddhanta or the actuality of Siddha Pranali in a discussion regarding writing in Nectar of Instruction and so forth and so on, right? So he's having a conversation here where he's describing what actual process is, not the artificial so-called process, right? Rishikeshananda. Gurudev, what about Manasi Seva, like the Brahmin who burnt his finger while in meditation? Very famous pastime. One Brahmin was serving sweet rice. Srila Prabhupada has this in his summary of Nectar Devotion. And while he was meditating, he wanted to check the sweet rice and actually burnt his finger. And then in his conscious state, what's called Bahir Dasa, he saw that his finger was actually burnt from what he was doing internally, which is called Antradasha. Right? Srila Prabhupada, Krishna makes no distinction, but if you serve Krishna by mind, Manasa Seva, Krishna will accept. That is sure. Rishikeshananda, Gurudev, whenever I mention anything about Raganuga Bhakti, many of my godbrothers get angry and say it is all a bunch of Gaudiya Mat nonsense. And you never taught that. Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada. I lost my place for a second here. Srila Prabhupada. Everything is coming. They will also know it. Everything is coming. They will also know it. Rishikeshananda Prabhu. Gurudev. What about Raganuga Bhakti? what is the eternal relationship between us, disciples, and you? Srila Prabhupada quoting the last part of a famous prayer of to Sri Guru. Nikunja yuno rati keli siddhai, yad ali bhiya yuktira pakshaniyai. So this is obviously from Guru Astakam of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada said, Tatrari ati dakshad. Tatri dakshad, right? Ati valabhasya. Vande Guroshi charanandavindam. The spiritual master is very dear because he's expert in assisting the gopis. So the Guru is serving under his master, and you all, my disciples in quote, can do likewise. In Nitya Leela, every disciple thinks like that. My master is the most dear to Radha Krishna. Rishikeshananda, so I'm coming to the end of their conversation. So that means my relationship with you is eternal. That it will continue in Nitya Leela in the sweetness of Goloka Vrindavan, Gokul Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada, yes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, etc. So, when we start to sort of take things that Srila Prabhupada says, we have to be careful for two things. One is not to weaponize them under that group dynamic of cult of compliance. But we have to create the culture of inquiry by genuinely answering the questions according to the full spectrum of what Srila Prabhupada has written. This is not hard to find. It's not hard to find. It's documented in many places. It's written by Rishikeshananda Prabhu. The video is there. Now, if we wanted to do more vetting, even of what's spoken here, obviously in Srila Prabhupada's books, when you read them deeply, you'll find the same conceptions are being taught in Srila Prabhupada's books themselves. So you have both Srila Prabhupada's books and writings. I can quote you several shlokas from Chaitanya Charitamrita, like Antrabahir, Ihai Duitara Sadhan. Right? Srila Prabhupada is describing, quoting Chaitanya Charitamrita, two kinds of sadhan. Internal, Bahir, and internal and external. Bahir means external, and Antra means internal. And he describes two kinds of practices. Bahir sadhaka deha, Shravanam Kirtanam, Nija, Mone Nija, Koriya Bhavan, Ratni Dine, Raja Krishnera, Kare Shevan. Right? I may have mispronounced in this verse, but it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Right? I think it's in Madhya Leela chapter 8. Understand? Ramananda Samvad. So Srila Prabhupada is describing in these places what is the nature of Raganuga, Siddha Pranali, all these things he's describing. So let me particularly address Siddha Pranali. Siddha Pranali appears first in a way in the writing of our Goswami Varga when they describe Visesh Sambandha Gyan. So Jiva Goswami Pad is written in Bhakti Sandarbha describing Diksha. And he's written Divya Gyanahiyanta Shimanti Matre Bhagavad Sarup Gyanam Tena Bhagavad Visesh Sambandham Gyanamscha. So the word Visesh Sambandha means the particular type of relationship we have with a particular form of Krishna. So this is what that verse describes as the meaning of Divya Gyana, transcendental knowledge, which is one of the aspects of Diksha. Diksha is described to be in two aspects, the giving of Divya Gyan and Kshiyate Papanasanam, the potency coming from Guru to remove anartha, sins, etc., etc. Alright? Now, in those writings, and in the writings of Rupa Goswami, they've never used this word, Siddha Pranali. They have not used this word. So where has this term, Siddha Pranali, come from? One of the associates of Sriman Mahaprabhu's name was Vikeshwara Pandit. Vikeshwara Pandit had a disciple named Gopal Guru Goswami. That Gopal Guru Goswami is the same little boy who in the Leela, that when Mahaprabhu, he used to chant spontaneously. And in chanting spontaneously, he went to answer the call of nature, and Mahaprabhu gripped his tongue. And he was asked by one young boy named Gopal, why is it that you do that? And Mahaprabhu responded, well, because I'm about to answer the call of nature, and my tongue just automatically repeats the holy name. So Gopal mentioned, won't it be true that at the time of leaving this world, we may be in a very unclean condition, but we're recommended to chant the name. So obviously this is a Leela Mahaprabhu to glorify both Harinam and to glorify Gopal, who later becomes Gopal Guru Goswami. You understand? So that Gopal Guru Goswami, with his disciple Dhyan Chandra Goswami, wrote a Padati. A Padati is a methodology book of how to practice bhajan. In that methodology book, they identify the 11 elements: Nam, Rup, Ves, Vyas, Sambandha, Yuta, Agyay, Parakashta, Seva, Palidhasibhava, and Nivasakaha. So they identify 11 different elements of the actual composition of the Siddha Deha. Understand? So it was not originally done there, but they identified those 11 things. They've always been there in our line. But in the Padati, the identifying of these 11 things and the process of Siddha Pranali, or the giving or awarding of the 11 elements of the Siddha Deha as part of the practice of bhajan. You understand? Now, both Gopal Guru Goswami and Dhyanachandra Goswami, highly qualified pure Vaishnavas. There's no question of this. You understand? The practice of that entire period, coming from Mahaprabhu all the way down to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and the transition with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this was the practice. But the practice was among those who were qualified for it. Now, what does the word Siddha Pranali mean? Pranali means a channel, much in the same way Parampara means a channel. How do we receive spiritual knowledge and spiritual potency? Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajasayo Vidu, Krishna described in Bhagavad Gita. Through Parampara, Pranali means a Parampara. That's what a Pranali is. It's a channel. Siddha means it should be a channel of those who are Siddha. That is the meaning, Siddha Pranali. A channel or Parampara of Siddhas. The descent of Swarup Shakti and spiritual identity descending through that channel, awarded by Guru, Srila Prabhupada, Guru will give, right, was a standard practice in the community of Mahaprabhu, or in the followers of Mahaprabhu, from the time of the Goswami Varga all the way to the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Now, it is not, and this has been well researched, that every single line coming from Mahaprabhu gave Siddha Pranali at the time of Diksha. That was not a universal thing. Siddha Pranali is given at the time of qualification. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing in Jaiva Dharma. Guru does Ruchi Pariksha. What is the particular kind of attraction you have, everything. So many details are there. I can't get into everything here. But there's so many details in this. So, what has happened is, one, there's a misunderstanding even of what Dhyanachandra Goswami and Gopal Guru Goswami wrote in Gaura Govinda Archan Smar and Padati, for one, among people who just somehow or another heard the word Siddha Pranali associated with some negativity, and then, oh, well, Prabhupada said this about it, and ran with that, right, and didn't really fully research Prabhupada's own statements on it, or anything else. So now, Mukunda, therefore, is a suggestion that we should practice the giving of Siddha Pranali? Don't be ridiculous. First of all, Siddha Pranali, when you look at it from an ontological perspective, or a perspective of what its actual function is, do we or do we not have it in our lives? What happens when you take Diksha? Are you not receiving in seed form what your perfection is? Here's another problem. Many devotees are taking Diksha, they don't even know what it is. They've only associated Diksha with the external features of Diksha, like being able to now render service on the altar. But the internal purpose of Diksha I described. is to give particular focus, ekantic focus on a particular form of the Lord and a particular relationship with the Lord. This is what Jiva Goswami has written clearly about the meaning of the word Diksha. So, it's not like we're not receiving that. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's mentioned here clearly. Mahaprabhu told, Mali Kanasebi Jaropan Shravanam Kirtale Jale Karye Shekon. Become like a gardener. Take the beej, the seed, that means what's given a Diksha, plant it, which means two things. One is when you take Diksha, it is the process that when you become Saranagat, it's the symbolizing of the planting of that seed. If you're not Saranagat, that seed of the perfection of bhakti, your relationship, your form of Bhagavan that's exclusive to you, all of that remains in seed form and can't fructify unless you become Saranagat. Mukunda, what is the proof for that? Diksha kale, bhakta kane, kari atma samarpan. Diksha kale, bhakta kane. The devotee at the time of Diksha, atma samarpan, when they become Saranagat, say kale, Krishna kare, Kare Atmasam. At that time, Krishna allows the flow of Swarup Shakti, which is the revelatory power. Who am I? Who is Bhagavan? What is our relationship? To completely flow. At the time, the devotee becomes Saranagat. Prahlad Maharaj also mentioned, doing the 9 angas of bhakti. First, Iti Pumsaprita Vishnu Bhaktaschin Navalakshan. You have to first become Saranagat, and then effectively practice the 9 angas of bhakti. Similarly, in Chaitanya Charitamrita is mentioned, the revelation of what is what will come at the time of Diksha Kale, Bhakta Kale, Atma Samarpan. When you become Samarpan means Saranagat. So this becomes a big part of the problem. So at the time of Diksha, we receive the seed of all of these things. Mahaprabhu said, you have to now plant that seed, means become Saranagat. You understand? Then Shravanam Kirtane Jale Kariye Shekon. Then you water it through the practice of bhakti, which is predominated by Shravan Kirtan. You understand? So Siddha effectively is the process which everyone goes through in order to receive Diksha. That process is essentially what Siddha is. Corrupted forms of Siddha are certainly there, just like corrupted forms of the practice of bhakti in any institution have been there. Devotees have come up with all kinds of apasiddhantic ideas and practices. So that's not exclusive to any one community, any one concept in bhakti or anything else. So we have to just be very careful. And if we kill the culture of inquiry and replace it with a cult of compliance, young devotees coming up and aspirants will never come to understand these things clearly. And those who are pushing a cult of compliance, in many cases do so to avoid being responsible to explain these things, either for want of knowledge themselves of it, or as, I don't know, some kind of egoistic posture to keep the social-spatial relationship that I talked about. We're the advanced, mature disciples of the Acharya, etc., and everybody else should come in our wake, so to speak. Discounting the individuality of people who may have been practicing many lifetimes. You understand? So, and of course, if the principle, the operating principle is Trenadapi Sunichena, right, this wouldn't be happening anyway, because everybody would be thinking from the position of humility. You understand? So, again, let me just give a summary here. Basically, one is that the culture of inquiry is essential to progress in bhakti. And culture of inquiry means somebody's inquiring and somebody's answering. That means the inquirer needs to be sincere and the person who's answering needs to be qualified to answer the question. If not, then the Trenadapi Sunich thing to do would be to say, I am not actually sure. I've not done study deeply into this thing. I will research and get back to you, or I will point you in the direction of somebody who can answer your question adequately. The whole idea of then creating, all these negative affiliations and so forth, it's actually destructive to the faith process of the aspirant. It's not helpful. You tell people, well, have you realized you're not this body? That has nothing to do with the question, and they're trying to realize they're not the body. You're explaining clearly would go a longer way in helping people to realize, no, you're not the body, because they're getting a true understanding. Right now, they've just been embarrassed in a crowd. Or right now, they just felt like, well, my questions are foolish. Therefore, they'll take caution in asking questions in the future. So rather than being inspired, they'll be intimidated. So we have to break the cult of compliance and create the culture of inquiry. And if you don't feel the sense of compassion to people, to, in a humble way, say, I don't know. If I don't know something, if I cannot quote Sastra and affirm something I'm saying, I will tell people, I am not sure about this. Let me research it. I will check with my Shiksha Gurus. I'll check with senior devotees. I'll give you their information. You can ask more senior devotees. But this idea of shutting off inquiry by weaponizing what somebody has gleaned from a statement of Srila Prabhupada or Srila Gurudev or any other acharya, this is very harmful to the progress of devotees. If a devotee was intelligent enough to navigate their way through the entire material social fabric to come to the practice of bhakti, don't think that they're so dull they can't understand if you try to give explanations. Now, they may not digest everything, but that is the duty of those who want to be preachers in the line of Mahaprabhu, to then make the adjustments to strengthen what they can understand and set the table for future understanding. But shutting down the process of inquiry by making them feel a sense of intimidation or inadequacy or stupidity or any other negative feeling, and therefore pushing them into a cult of compliance, just kind of go along with the normative structure of what has been the ceiling of what is expected of us to understand. This starts to become a neo-Krishna Christianity model. Well, the Acharya was a pure devotee. He's going to save everyone. Just stand by. Don't go too deep. Don't try to understand too deep or practice too deep. Just hang in there, die, and it'll all happen. So stop, basically. Stop. Have heart compassion. And for one's own edification, try to study deeply. Try to practice deeply. Right? And then try to help others as well. This is compassion. This is truly compassion. Other than that, it's kind of, and if it's being done because a person is just thinking they're doing the right thing, then hopefully, if somebody hears this or the word spreads about this, because I'm not the only one speaking like this, then they'll maybe make a reconsideration. Or, if they have that kind of doubt, then sit with someone and say, listen, well, this is what I've been feeling, this is how I've understood Srila Prabhupada, and allow even devotees to hear the various sides of a discussion. It's almost always done in darkness. It's always done behind the scenes, and so forth and so on. It seems to never come out. Well, let's have a discussion. Let's have an open forum and kind of discuss it. Get clarity on it. Right? I've tried to be brief here, so whatever mistakes I might have made historically and so forth and so on, you please forgive that. I didn't sit to do a more thorough presentation on it. It's from what I have, remembering off the top of my mind, with emphasis on really wanting to more emphasize the whole idea of establishing the culture of inquiry. And by the way, wherever I've seen any leader in any particular group maintain that culture of inquiry, their particular group in terms of bhakti is flourishing. And we should not conflate flourishing of externals with the flourishing of bhakti. You could have magnificent temples, buildings, structures, money, members with money, this thing, that thing, etc. But if bhakti is not flourishing there, it's not bhakti, plain and simple. Right? So we cannot conflate and measure things by how things look externally. We'll have to see, is bhakti present there? You understand? Alright. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhuvevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.